Pocahontas. Though alone, I'm not defenseless. The Great Spirit's eye sleeps never, and his ear is never closed. Father and brother, ye shall find me true. From these I'll hide my grief, but once alone, I'll quench my fire in tears. Sir Thomas Dale, to John Ratliff. Now to send news to Powhatan touching the chance we've received to thwart his treachery. Pocahontas. In a daughter's ear, who dares to breathe that word against her sire? To free his country from invaders' tread, he tries the arts his rugged life has taught. Ye blame the red man, yet adopt his wiles. Why do ye practice treachery, deceit, trampling on hospitable gratitude by thus constraining me? Oh, shame! The stream of patriot love flows in my father's heart, though shadowed so by dark and lacing woods. The sun of mercy cannot always pierce their thick, unwholesome gloom. No such excuse is yours, for from the current of your souls, the tomahawk of ages has hewn down all that impeded the pure light of heaven. Again, that excerpt is from Act 2, Scene 2, from Charlotte Mary Sanford Barnes' The Forest Princess. This play provided U.S. American audiences a different perspective on the traditional Pocahontas story. White American playwrights had embedded Pocahontas early in the American literary consciousness. Plays such as James Nelson Barker's The Indian Princess and George Washington Custis's Pocahontas or The Settlers of Virginia were done with regularity, especially in the sort of antebellum period prior to the Civil War, when the Indian play as genre was incredibly popular. Those aforementioned plays portray a Pocahontas that is often, successfully absorbed into white American culture, who is a savior and supporter of white colonial culture, and who is fairly passive and apolitical, usually meant to, be a cipher, as opposed to a person with her own thoughts and political actions. That probably is why those plays in particular were so popular, because they don't challenge any conceptions that the primarily white American audience would be sort of angling towards and embracing. Barnes does something a little different. Her connection to the Pocahontas myth is shown early in her life. She's the daughter of well-respected actors. And at 12, she sat in the audience of the Park Theater in New York City and watched her mother, Mary Greenhill Barnes, perform as Pocahontas in Custis's version of the play. This performance possibly remained in Barnes's consciousness as she began her own career as a playwright and actress. Her first play was Octavia Regality. She wrote it at age 18, and it was incredibly popular. The Forest Princess, which premiered later in 1848 in Philadelphia, was not as successful. While Barnes' play does reinforce whiteness as the dominant structure in the United States, her focus on Pocahontas is as a political figure with power in her own right, and it makes her version an exception to the norm, and perhaps contributed to the lack of excitement and mass appeal that other Pocahontas plays engendered at the time. The familiar plot points remains: she saves John Smith from her father, she marries John Rolfe and actually chooses to do so, rather in other plays where she is a passive actor in those negotiations. And she fosters pleasant relations between the white colonists and the indigenous tribes of which she belongs. However, Barnes reconstitutes Pocahontas as, quote, a non-white, non-male champion of equal justice who boldly questions the right of the British to pursue racial and colonial domination, end quote, and who exercises her free will repeatedly within the play, as the excerpt demonstrates. At the point of the excerpt, Pocahontas, despite her status as a hostage of the English colonizers, Sir Ratliff and Thomas Dale, does not cower in the face of their threats and treachery. She counters their racist remarks and perceptions with the hypocrisy of the treatment of her people. The English colonists blame the indigenous peoples for resisting their attempts to Christianize and colonize, and resort to violence over and over again, even when the indigenous tribes reach out the hand of peace and supply them with food and other resources, as Pocahontas's tribe has done. Placing these accurate assessments of white colonial behavior into Pocahontas's voice is a much more active position than in other dramatized versions of the tale. Barnes's Pocahontas wields political and social influence over both Native and white society and is unafraid of demonstrating that even when held hostage by powerful white men. Barnes's subversion of this common narrative of white patriarchy is fascinating and also may account for the play's lack of reception and success. After all, it is likely that her, quote, democratic yet radical viewpoints about gender and race may have made 19th century audiences less than enthusiastic about it, if not downright hostile to the play, as Rebecca Jeroff notes. Of course, this radical repositioning of Pocahontas' character is still rooted in the white supremacist and misogynist structure of American society. Barnes doesn't hesitate to frame Pocahontas' tragic death at the end of the play as a lionization of the United States, Virginia in particular, the father of the country who came from Virginia, George Washington, and manifest destiny. There's an epic tableau at the end that juxtaposes the dying indigenous princess against the rising eagles of the United States and its manifest destiny. All indigenous roles would have been played by white actors, including the title role. There are stereotypes in abundance of the savage, as per the popular white American sentiment. But as shown as the excerpt, there are layers to Barnes's construction of Pocahontas as a character and the past settlement of Virginia that other white male authors deny her. It makes for a unique study in 19th century American drama.